Have you ever stared straight into the mirror and asked yourself, why is it that I do everything right? I'm good. I'm genuine. Yet, in the end, she still walks away. Listen, I'm not here to pat you on the back with some cheap line like, she didn't deserve you anyway. I'm here to tell you the brutal truth. Women don't leave you because you weren't kind enough. They leave because in their eyes you stopped being the man their heart craves. And that's the real pain. Harsh, isn't it? But you need it. You need the truth, like a knife cutting through skin, sharp, raw, and painful, but it wakes you up. Because here's what no one dares to say: men aren't destroyed by a lack of love. They're destroyed by losing themselves in the chase for a half-hearted love that was never real in the first place. And if you're man enough to sit here for 20 minutes, I'm going to show you not only why you've been rejected, but how to turn that rejection into a weapon so you can walk into this world as a warrior, not a beggar. Are you ready? Because the next part will shatter one of the biggest illusions modern men are trapped in. You've probably heard this line before: as long as you truly love her, she'll feel it and stay. That's one of the greatest lies society has drilled into men for generations. Believe it, and you'll drown in disappointment. Because here's the truth: women don't fall in love because of how much you love them. They fall in love because of who you are, especially when you don't need them. I know it sounds paradoxical, but think back. Those times you lost your composure just because she didn't text back for 10 minutes. Those moments you canceled your entire schedule just to prove I'm always here for you. Each second of that you thought you were scoring points, but in reality you were doing one thing: exposing your dependence. And here's the trap. Women might like you when you're eager, when you're attentive, but they only love deeply when they feel safe in your presence. Safe doesn't mean you're the couch she can collapse on whenever she pleases. Safe means you are the mountain unshaken by storms, unmoved, even when she tests you, lashes out, or goes silent. Evolutionary psychology has shown us this. Women are most drawn to emotional stability, not muscles, not money, but the ability to keep control in chaos. Because deep down, that's the signal of a natural leader. A man who can lead himself is the only kind of man who can truly protect others. Let me tell you a story. I once knew a guy, we'll call him Mark. Mark wasn't rich, he wasn't flashy, but he had one thing: a calmness that bordered on cold-blooded. His girlfriend would test him, yell at him, even disappear for days. He didn't blow up her phone, he didn't crumble, he went on with his work, hit the gym, went out with his buddies. When she came back, he welcomed her lightly, but never out of desperation. What happened? She clung tighter, because in her eyes, Mark wasn't a nice guy. He was an anchor. Now contrast that with the men you see everywhere, anxious, glued to their phones, jealous at the mere mention of another man. That's not love. That's fear dressed up as love. And fear always drives women away. This is where you need to stop and ask yourself, are you living as a man who places women at the center of his universe? Or are you living as a man who puts his mission, his purpose at the center? Because women only fall in love when they see that fire in your eyes, the fire of a man with direction, a man who doesn't tremble whether she stays or leaves. And this brings us to the next truth. One almost no man ever considers: a woman's love doesn't grow from how much you give, but from how much she's forced to invest in you. Here's a truth most men never notice. Love isn't measured by how much you give, but by how much she's forced to put on the line for you. That's right, women don't love because of your sacrifices. They love because they've invested so much in you that walking away would cost them a piece of themselves. Think back to the last time you bought a cheap pair of shoes. You wore them a few times, tossed them around, and when they ripped you didn't care, you just threw them away. But if you saved for months and spent real money on those shoes, you'd take care of them, protect them. Even when they wore out, you'd hesitate to let them go. Human beings are like that. We attach to what we've poured time, effort, sweat, and energy into. Women are no different. Here's the problem. Most men do the exact opposite. They carry the entire emotional bill of the relationship. They plan every date, send every first text, buy every gift, sacrifice their time just to keep her. Meanwhile, she barely has to lift a finger. And then these men wonder why, when it ends, she walks away so lightly as if nothing deep ever existed. The answer is simple. She never actually invested. You want the harsh truth? A woman can leave you overnight if she hasn't had to give much to you. But if she's had to struggle, sacrifice, and pour her energy into keeping you, that's when you've become a part of her identity. Leaving you then feels like tearing away her own skin. That's why the deeper she invests, the deeper she loves. But don't misunderstand. Letting women invest doesn't mean you play cheap hard to get games or fake aloofness. That's the insecure guy's trick, desperate for control. The real way is this. You create a life with standards, with boundaries, with spaces that she has to willingly step into and fill. For example, you're not always the one who texts first. You don't cancel your gym session every time she happens to be free. You don't show up like a puppy the moment she snaps her fingers. Instead, you give her the chance to prove how much she wants to see you, to show that she's also willing to rearrange her schedule. That's not about playing power games. It's the necessary balance for true attachment to form. I once knew a man, let's call him David. He adored his girlfriend, and to prove it, he gave up his startup project, sacrificed every weekend to please her, played the perfect shoulder to cry on. Guess what? She left. And within a month, she already had a new boyfriend. Why? Because in that relationship, David paid the entire price. She paid nothing. Walking away cost her zero. Now compare that with another man I knew, not the best looking, not the wealthiest, but he made sure his girlfriend was constantly investing. She had to learn about his work worry when he was busy fight for her place in his packed schedule. And the result? When conflict came, she didn't walk away. Her bond wasn't just emotional, it was built on the sweat she had poured in. So here's the question. Are you giving women the chance to invest in you, or are you trying to buy their love with one-sided sacrifice? Because when you understand this principle, you'll begin to see the bigger picture. Love isn't just about feelings. It's about psychology and biology, about who you are and how much she's put into you. And if you truly want to be the man women never easily let go of, you need to understand the deeper mechanism of human attachment itself. And that's exactly where we're heading next, the invisible force that silently decides whether you'll be unforgettable or disposable. Have you ever wondered why some relationships end and she forgets you in just a few months, while others linger for 10 years, and even after all that time, just hearing your name makes her chest tighten? That's not luck. That's science. It's the subconscious attachment system, the invisible chain stronger than any spoken vow. In psychology, it's called the attachment system. It works like a program wired into us from childhood experiences. As adults, it dictates how men and women bond, cling, or let go. And here's the catch, women unconsciously test this system in you. Not with logic, but with a deep, instinctive feeling. Think about it. When she goes silent for a day, doesn't text back, not because she hates you, but because she wants to see. Does he crumble without me, or does he stand firm? That's an attachment test. If you panic, flood her with messages, get angry, you've just proven your attachment is insecure and dependent. But if you stay calm, continue with your work, keep your rhythm. She feels something crucial. With this man, I don't have to carry the burden of his emotional stability, and that's the foundation of lasting attraction. Remember this, women aren't searching for a boy who constantly needs reassurance. They're searching for a man who can be a pillar. And that pillar isn't about big muscles or a fat bank account. The real anchor is a steady nervous system, a man whose dopamine, cortisol, and oxytocin don't spiral just because she momentarily pulls away. I once read the work of Dr. John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory. He showed that people with secure attachment rarely fall into anxious or avoidant extremes. They can love while keeping boundaries. On the other hand, those with anxious attachment constantly fear loss, so they overinvest, smother, and control. Ironically, that very control is what pushes the partner further away. This is where modern men collapse. Society tells you, prove your love, try harder, never let her go. And you obey. But every time you chase, you're teaching her brain one thing: you're dependent. You're not the man being chosen, you're the man doing the begging. And so her attachment weakens. But here's the genius move. The man who lets her invest, like we talked about before, is creating memory traces in her brain. Every time she reaches out, every time she sacrifices for him, her brain releases dopamine tied to his image. That's why when women love deeply, they obsess over the smallest details of a man, because every detail is wired with their own emotional investment. I once heard a woman admit, "I can't forget him. Not because he was perfect, but because I poured so much of myself into him. I sacrificed time, career, friends. Leaving him would mean admitting all of it was meaningless, and I couldn't." That's attachment at its deepest, when love stops being a feeling and becomes part of her identity. So the question is, who do you want to be in her attachment system? A faint memory or an imprint carved so deep she can never erase it. And that brings us to the final truth, the ultimate key. If you grasp this, you won't just be loved, you'll become the man she can't replace. That's where we're heading next. This is the moment when every mask has to fall. Because you can train your emotional stability, you can skillfully create space for her to invest. You can master the psychology of attachment. But if you lack this one element, everything crumbles. And that element is this: your life's purpose has to be bigger than love itself. Sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? But think about it. Women don't fall in love with a man simply because he loves them. They fall for the man who makes them feel like they are part of something greater than themselves. A man who doesn't live to please her, but lives for a mission, something that would still drive him forward, even if love disappeared tomorrow. You've seen this kind of man. He might not be the best looking or the richest, but when he speaks about his work, his dream, the thing he's building, his eyes light up. And in that moment, women are pulled in. Not because they care about his job, but because they see a man who cannot be shaken. A man who, if they join their own life, will expand as well. On the other hand, the man who lives only to be loved, only to please, only to hold on to a relationship, he quickly loses his magnetism. Because women don't want to be the center of your universe. They want to be the companion in a universe you've already created. That's the difference between a beggar for love and the man who gets chosen. Let me give you a real example. A guy named Alex Smart, always there for his girlfriend. He thought that by always being available, by setting aside his own passions, she'd finally see how genuine his love was. But the more he did, the more she pulled away. Until one day she told him, "You're too predictable, too ready. There's nothing for me to chase." He was crushed. He believed he had done everything right, but the truth, he had no fire of his own, no mission to invite her into. Now look at another man, call him Daniel. He loved his girlfriend, yes, but he never abandoned his research project, never gave up his mountain climbing expeditions. He loved her, but his love didn't consume him. The result: she invested, she fought for her place, she worked to keep up with him, and their love grew deeper, stronger, harder to break. Here's the paradox. Men must wake up to women don't want you to make them your only goal. They want to see you chasing a larger purpose, and when they stand beside you, they want to feel that purpose touching their life too. A Western philosopher once wrote, "The man who lives only to be loved will lose both love and himself." The man who lives for an ideal often receives love as a reward. So the question isn't, how do I keep her? The question is, what mission makes me an unquenchable fire? The kind of man a woman would want to stand beside for life. And this leads us directly into the ending, the emotional strike that ties it all together, leaving you both shaken and clear. That's what we'll unravel now. If you've stayed with me all the way to this point, it means there's a part of you that refuses to keep living the same old way. You've heard enough to wake up. You're tired of bowing down just to earn scraps of attention. You're sick of losing yourself in relationships that only give you fragments of shallow affection. And now you stand at a crossroads. One path is the old road, keep being the nice guy, predictable, agreeable, and easily abandoned. The other path, rougher and harder, is the road of the man who lives with a mission, who knows his value, who lets women invest in him, and who understands that love only has meaning when it comes as a reward, not as his lifeline. Which path will you choose? Here's what I want you to etch into your bones. You don't need more promises from women. You need a promise to yourself. A promise that you will not surrender your manhood for anyone. A promise that you will build a life so solid that even if you must stand alone, you will stand proud, unshaken. And if what I've shared has pierced your deepest wound, then don't keep it to yourself. The man next to you, maybe your best friend, maybe a colleague, he's also drowning in the dark with no way out. Send him this video, not as a fan, but as a brother in arms, a signal that says you're not alone, we're waking up. If you've got the guts, leave your mark, subscribe, share, so we can build a community of men who no longer chase cheap love, but reclaim their honor and their freedom of spirit together. Because in the end, real love isn't something you run after. It's what runs after you once you've become the man who cannot be replaced.